All right, good morning, everyone. Hello. I'm very excited to be here to talk to you about some research that I've been conducting with a faculty member at my school, Dr. Sridhari Desai, who's in the audience, happily cheering me on about how we're trying to infuse the discussion of race into research on negotiations. So when you think about the topic of women in negotiations, there's a lot of research that has looked at the outcomes and the effectiveness of women and the effect of gender on negotiations. And what we know is that women don't ask. There's this notion and idea in the popular press that women simply don't ask. And a lot of the research has shown that they don't ask because they're doing it to avoid backlash or there's dangers in negotiating for women. And so there's even new notions that say that in order to eliminate the pervasive gender inequality and pay gap, that we really should be eliminating negotiations because they don't help women. And this notion is based on stereotypes of men and women, where women are seen as warm and cooperative and men are seen as assertive and competitive. And this assertive and competitiveness really favors men in a negotiation context in which assertiveness and competitiveness is expected and thought to be the recipe for success. And so what the research shows us is that women avoid negotiating. When they do, they receive lower economic payoffs and outcomes for it. And there's a lot of just negative outcomes of lower self-efficacy, higher negative emotions associated with negotiations for women. And so this is really good research, but one of the problems with this research is that it's really treated women as an indivisible, uniform whole where the expectations and the outcomes for women are all the same. And what we propose is that this research doesn't actually apply to all women. The expectations of warmth and cooperativeness particularly doesn't apply to a specific group of women we've been talking about a lot today, and that is Black women. Instead, Black women are really seen and portrayed as strong and dominant and more aggressive, and so the expectations of warmth and competence that normally lead people to believe that women would be not successful in a negotiations context is not the same for Black women, who are actually expected to engage in these assertive and dominant behaviors that are associated with success in this particular negotiation context. And so this is also based on research that has shown that the Black stereotype particularly is masculine, where people expect both Black men and women to be more masculine than whites or Asians. And research that has shown that Black women in particular, aren't penalized in the same way as their white female counterparts for displaying dominant behaviors, because these dominant behaviors are not counter-stereotypical for them. And so based on this, we hypothesized a couple of things where people would perceive Black women as to be tougher negotiators, harder negotiators, and this would help them actually receive better offers in a distributive kind of win-loss negotiation where one person's win is another person's loss. And we thought that this would be explained by perceptions of dominance. So I'm going to present to you 4 studies in which we looked at this very quickly, just like giving you the highlights. So the first one, we looked at perceived bargaining stance. So this was a very simple MTurk study where we just were interested in what people would think of Lakeisha, a Black female negotiator, versus Sarah, a white female negotiator. What we found is that people expected Lakeisha to use much more tougher bargaining tactics. And what I mean by that, they thought that Lakeisha was going to give them a lowball offer, that Lakeisha wasn't going to be willing to make concessions. And so they were really prepared to face this effective negotiator, this person that was effectively going to take more in this negotiation scenario. And so in study 2, we wanted to see if this would translate to negotiation offers. And we also wanted to know if this translated in different contexts, right? We live in a global economy. People are negotiating across cultures. And so we did this with senior managers in India, where we actually presented them with a scenario where they were negotiating for project delivery timelines. And we crafted the scenario to be very specific to negotiations that they actually conduct daily with US counterparts in other countries. And so what we found is that our managers committed to delivering projects on average 13 days faster to a Black female negotiator than a white female negotiator. Now, I'm way quicker because I got a 1-minute warning. So we looked at this in a 2x2 where we wanted to see what the comparison group, including men in this, how would this work? And what we actually found is that Black females were given better offers in a negotiation scenario that was based on a furniture sale. And this was really explained by perceptions of dominance. When we looked at the results for female negotiators in particular, people perceived the Black woman to be a more dominant negotiator, and therefore they gave her a better offer. So in a final study, we decided to take this out into the field. This was a lot of scenario-based things. Does this really happen? And so in study 4, we did a Craigslist experiment where we contacted actual sellers on Craigslist as Sarah Miller or Ebony Jackson, and just asked them, hey, is the price negotiable on this thing that you're trying to sell? And what we found is that the number of responses there wasn't a significant difference in responses. Black women negotiators got a little bit more, but it wasn't significant. But what is that black female negotiators on average were given a 4% better discount or better negotiated price simply for asking, hey, is this price negotiable? If so, how much would you give me? So in conclusion, what we found is that black females actually enjoy a unique advantage in this distributive negotiation context. And so tying into the talks earlier, black women should ask, right? They should go for those more riskier roles. And thank you.